started with a joke I shouldn't have made. A warm Saturday afternoon, the kind where the whole street seemed lazy, the air heavy with the smell of cut grass. I saw her standing on her porch, sunlight catching in her blonde hair, her white blouse tucked neatly into a dark skirt. She looked impossibly polished for such an ordinary day, like she didn't belong to this neighborhood, but to some glossy magazine cover. And without thinking, I blurted, "You look like Jennifer Lopez." She froze, her lips curling into a slow, amused smile. For a moment I thought she'd blush, or maybe thank me. Instead, she tilted her head, narrowed her eyes, and shot back. "And you? You look like Homer Simpson." The word stung, but her tone wasn't cruel. It was teasing, sharp enough to cut, yet playful enough to pull me closer. I felt my ears burn as she held my gaze, the corner of her mouth lifting higher. She enjoyed watching me squirm. I tried to laugh it off, scratching the back of my neck. "Homer Simpson, huh? That's harsh." She stepped down one stair, closing the space between us. The scent of her perfume reached me, subtle, expensive, intoxicating. "Well," she said softly, "maybe if you didn't hesitate so much, I'd have compared you to someone else." My heart jumped. The way she said it, low, deliberate, almost like a dare, sent a rush of heat through me. She was standing close enough now that I could see the fine lines at the edge of her eyes, the glint of humor mixed with something darker. I wasn't hesitating. I muttered, though my voice cracked. "Really?" Her eyes flicked to my lips, just for a second, "because it feels like you always stop right here." She lifted her hand and let her fingertips hover inches from my chest. Not touching, just close enough that I could feel the space between us vibrate. I swallowed hard. The world around me blurred. The sound of a lawn mower down the street. Kids playing in the distance. All of it faded into the unbearable silence between her words. My hand twitched, ready to close the distance, to pull her fingers against me. But I froze. She noticed. Of course. She always noticed. Her smile widened, a soft laugh slipping from her lips. "See?" she whispered, leaning just close enough that her breath grazed my ear. Hesitation. Classic Homer. I clenched my fists, heat and frustration surging through me. "You like pushing me, don't you?" Her laughter deepened. "Rich and dangerous." "Maybe," she said, turning away slowly, deliberately, swaying her hips as she stepped back onto the porch. "Or maybe I like seeing how long you can stand it." She looked over her shoulder one last time, her eyes locking on mine, sparkling with wicked amusement. Then she disappeared into her house, leaving the door just slightly ajar. I stood frozen on the lawn, breathless, pulse hammering, caught between shame and desire. It had started with a joke, but already it didn't feel like one anymore. The next evening, I found myself on her porch again. I told myself I was just returning the gardening shears she'd lent me last week. But the truth was simpler. I wanted to see her before I could even knock. The door opened. She stood there with 2 cups of tea, steam rising between us. "Perfect timing," she said, smiling like she'd been expecting me. "Come in." Her living room glowed with amber light, shadows softening the edges of the furniture. She motioned for me to sit on the sofa, then sank down beside me, closer than I anticipated. The tea was untouched on the table, forgotten almost instantly. So she began, tilting her head, her blonde hair brushing her shoulder. "Tell me, Homer, do you always compliment women like that, comparing them to celebrities?" I laughed nervously. "I didn't mean it like that. It slipped." "Slipped?" she repeated, savoring the word. Her lips curled into a smirk. Interesting how the truth usually slips. The silence stretched. She leaned closer, her shoulder grazing mine. My breath caught. She smelled like jasmine and something sharper, something dangerous. I turned my head slightly and found her eyes on me. Bright, steady, daring. Her hand moved, reaching for the collar of my shirt, smoothing it as if it needed fixing. But her fingers lingered too long, brushing against my neck, sending a shiver through me. I froze, my heart pounding. "You always stop here," she whispered, her fingers still hovering. almost but not quite touching my skin. Always so close, but never crossing. I don't want to, I began, but the words tangled in my throat. Don't want to what? She asked, leaning even closer. Her lips hovered inches from mine, her voice soft and taunting. Don't want to admit what you're thinking. My hand twitched on the sofa, aching to reach for hers. My pulse hammered in my ears. The world outside, the cicadas, the hum of a car passing, faded until there was only her. Her lips, her eyes locked on mine. I opened my mouth, ready to close the unbearable distance. But she pulled back suddenly, laughing softly, picking up her teacup as if nothing had happened. Careful, Homer, she teased. Tea's hot. Don't burn yourself. I stared at her breathless, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on me. She sipped her tea calmly, her expression unreadable, though I swore I saw the flicker of a smile tugging at her lips. When I finally stood to leave, she followed me to the door. As I stepped into the night air, she leaned close, her voice a whisper against my ear. Next time, maybe don't hesitate. The door clicked shut behind me, leaving me trembling on her porch, haunted by her words. Saturday afternoon. She waved me over from her yard. Sunlight spilled across her lawn, the air thick with the scent of freshly cut grass. Can you help me with this? She called, pointing at a stubborn wooden panel leaning against the fence. Her tone was casual, but her eyes glinted with something else. I crossed over, trying to keep my breath steady. She was dressed differently this time. Jeans and a fitted blouse that clung just enough to remind me why I couldn't look away. She knelt to adjust the panel, and I caught myself staring at the curve of her back, the strands of blonde hair slipping loose from her bun. Careful, Homer, she teased without turning around. Your eyes are louder than your words. Heat rushed to my face. I crouched beside her, gripping the panel, our shoulders brushing. The contact was electric, her perfume mingling with the smell of grass and cedar. For a moment, our hands overlapped on the wood. Neither of us pulled away, and then a voice broke the moment. Need some help here? I looked up to see another neighbor, a tall man in his 40s, striding toward us. He smiled broadly at her, barely acknowledging me. She stood, brushing her hands on her jeans, and greeted him warmly, too warmly. He leaned close as they spoke, and my chest tightened. I stayed silent, gripping the panel harder than necessary. They laughed together, her hand lightly touching his arm. My stomach twisted. Finally, she turned back to me, her smile sly. Well, what do you think, Homer? Can the two of you manage this? Or do I need to supervise? Her words stung, but her eyes lingered on mine a moment too long, daring me to react. I swallowed my pride and helped lift the panel, the other man taking the opposite side. The job was done quickly, but I barely heard his thanks. All I saw was her standing with arms folded, lips curved in amusement, watching me burn. When the man left, she stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You don't like competition, do you? I clenched my jaw. He doesn't matter. Her smile widened. Dangerous, delicious. Then prove it. I froze, the challenge hanging between us like a spark waiting for flame. My hand nearly reached for hers, but again hesitation chained me. She shook her head softly, her laugh cutting deep. Classic Homer, she murmured, brushing past me, her shoulder grazing mine. The warmth of that fleeting touch lingered, searing as she disappeared inside. I stood alone in her yard, the ache of jealousy gnawing at me. The truth was clear. I was already in too deep. It was almost midnight when the knock came, soft, hesitant, but enough to pull me from the couch. I opened the door, half expecting no one to be there, and found her standing in the dim glow of the porch light. Her hair was loose for once, falling over her shoulders, her sweater slipping off one side. She clutched a small box in her hands. Sorry, she whispered, though her eyes betrayed no apology. Do you happen to have batteries? Mine just died, and I need the flashlight. Batteries at midnight. I should have questioned it, but the words tangled on my tongue. I nodded, stepping aside. She slipped inside with that slow, deliberate grace that made the air feel heavier. Her gaze swept over my living room, lingering on the half-empty glass on the table. She smiled faintly. "Drinking alone?" "Not anymore," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. Her laugh was quiet, teasing. She set the box down and moved closer, the space shrinking until I could feel the warmth of her body near mine. "You always let women into your house this late?" she asked, tilting her head, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Only when they look like Jennifer Lopez?" I answered, surprising myself. Her smile deepened, and for the briefest moment, the game between us shifted. She reached up, adjusting her glasses, even though they didn't need adjusting. Her fingers brushed her temple, slow and deliberate, like she knew I couldn't look away. "Careful," she whispered, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. "If you keep saying things like that, you might start to believe them." The silence stretched unbearably thick. She stepped closer still until her shoulder grazed mine, until I could see the faint rise and fall of her breath. My hand twitched, wanting to close the distance to pull her closer. Her eyes flicked to mine, then down to my lips, then back again. For one suspended second, I was sure it would happen, that she would finally let the space collapse between us. My chest tightened, my breath caught, and then just as suddenly, she pulled away. "Smooth, effortless, cruel batteries," she said lightly, her tone once again casual. "Don't forget." I stumbled into the kitchen, my heart pounding. When I returned, she was leaning against the wall, arms folded, watching me with that infuriating half-smile. I handed her the pack, our fingers touched, just barely, and the jolt was enough to make me dizzy. "Thank you," she murmured, her eyes lingering on mine for a second too long. Then she turned, heading for the door. On the threshold, she paused, glancing back over her shoulder. Her voice dropped to a whisper, so soft I almost missed it. "You're always so close, Homer. One day you'll regret stopping there." The door closed, leaving me alone with the echo of her words. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't just teasing. She was warning me. The following evening, I told myself I wouldn't go, that I'd let the silence stretch, that I'd starve the fire she kept feeding. But when I saw her lights glowing through the blinds, heard the faint sound of music drifting across the fence, my resolve crumbled. I crossed the lawn and knocked. The door opened before my hand fell the second time. She stood there framed in warm lamplight, hair down, loose waves brushing her shoulders. She wore a simple dress, nothing extravagant, but on her it looked devastating. "You," she said softly, as if she'd been expecting me. "Come in." The living room was quiet, the music low. A bottle of wine sat open on the table, 2 glasses already poured. She gestured for me to sit, but I remained standing, my pulse hammering in my ears. "I need to ask," I said, the words breaking out of me. "Why do you keep doing this, pushing me, pulling back? What do you want from me?" Her smile flickered, then softened into something I hadn't seen before, something fragile. She walked toward me slowly, every step deliberate, her eyes locked on mine. "What do I want?" she echoed, stopping just inches away. Her fingers lifted, hovering near my jaw, not quite touching. "I want to see if you'll ever stop hesitating." The air between us burned. My chest ached with the weight of her nearness. Her lips were so close I could feel the heat of her breath, her eyes glinting with a mix of challenge and longing. I raised my hand finally to take hers. For once, I was ready to break the spell, to close the impossible distance. But she pulled back at the last second, her laughter low, almost sad. She turned away, picking up her glass of wine, her posture calm while mine shook. "You said I looked like Jennifer Lopez," she said, swirling the glass. "But you never noticed the truth." "What truth?" My voice cracked. She faced me again, her expression unreadable, her smile faint. "That you've been Homer all along. Always one step behind. Always waiting." Her words hit harder than any tease before. I stepped closer, desperate now, my hand gripping the back of the chair just to steady myself. "I'm here," I said. "I'm not waiting anymore." Her eyes softened, but she shook her head. She placed the glass down, then leaned in close, so close her lips nearly brushed my ear. Her whisper was a blade and a caress all at once. Then prove it or lose me forever. And with that, she turned, retreating into the glow of the hallway, leaving me alone in her living room with nothing but the echo of her challenge. The door to the back of the house clicked shut. I stood frozen, my body trembling, her words haunting me. Prove it or lose her forever.